events. That's also going to be held at the Asia Center. We're going to have lots of good food for thought in our stomachs. So we show up, get well fed, and then contribute your ideas about future programming for our Thai Studies program. Asia Center, 29th, lunchtime. I believe we have here our Thai language instructor. Thai? There you are, okay. So we are teaching now Thai language for credit in the Faculty of Arts and Sciences. This is our esteemed Thai instructor. She's got some promotional material. Please introduce yourself to her and help promote Thai language at Harvard. If you want to have a serious Thai studies program, you have to be able to do research in the original language, Thai, and therefore we need a Thai language program. So we're very happy. This is now the second year, right?
Yes.
Second year. And basically starting from zero, so it's slowly building. And to make sure that you don't miss other events coming up, I would encourage you to subscribe. It's for free to both the Thai Studies Program newsletter and at the Asia Center, the Southeast Asia Spotlight. They announce everything related to Southeast Asia in the community, all the different faculties at Harvard. So now, after these public service announcements, back to a bit more about this afternoon's guest speaker. Prior to his political career, Kumpita worked as an executive of Grab Thailand, which is kind of like Southeast Asia's answer to Uber and Lyft, more or less, but better. He was also CEO of AgriFood, a producer of rice bran oil products, and he started his business career at BCG, Boston Consulting Group. But the most important thing about his background, so I will leave it for last, is that Kumpita, he knows what's coming, he is a graduate of the Harvard Kennedy School, earning a Master of Public Administration in 2011. I should add, for full disclosure, he also earned an MBA at that little-known school downstream from HBS called MIT Sloan. So, yeah, we do believe in transparency. So today, Kumpita will speak about the future of Thailand with the theme, Comfort for Few, Crisis for Most, as he offers his thoughts on how Thailand can tackle pressing socioeconomic challenges stemming from, and it's a really intimidating list, acute inequality, an aging and shrinking population, declining labor productivity, political instability, and climate change vulnerability. So how can Thailand confront these challenges to ensure sustainable and inclusive prosperity? So without further ado, Kumpita, welcome back to Harvard, and the floor is yours.
Let me begin by expressing my gratitude to Professor Rosengard and everyone at the Asia Center for having me back and helping me reintegrating into the Harvard community, as well as the students here, as well as all of you that come to listen to me talk. Again, it's a topic that is very close to my heart, the future of Thailand. We can think about this as a continuation of my appearance last year. Last year was about moving Thailand forward. It was exactly on October 26th, and today is October 22nd, so we missed that by about 4 days. I think we should make this an annual event every year, because I have 9 years to spare. So, but there's gonna be some similarities and some differences as well, because last year I was still a member of parliament on suspension because they blocked me from becoming a prime minister, and they slapped the case on me, which I'm happy to report that I won in December, 2 months after I met with you guys, and then I returned to the parliament. But then they came back with a bigger hammer and dissolved the party and banned me for 10 years. So for this time, it's not going to be about moving Thailand forward or something political, because I'm no longer a politician. I'm a visiting scholar. So this time it's going to be more academics, and it's going to be exactly what the topic is talking about, the future of Thailand. And my objective for this 1 hour that we have together is that I become a bridge between Thailand and Harvard. We're going to be talking about the future, which is a synthesis of my past experience as member of parliament, and also the future of hypotheses of how we fix that. Professor Rosengard started off, giving you the answer of what the future of Thailand looks like in a sentence. It's going to be comfortable for few, but crisis for most. What he left out is that there are some suggested solutions and some strategies that can turn that into competitive for all. It doesn't have to be comfort for few, crisis for most, but also can be competitive for all. So I'm not just going to talk about problems that Thailand has or what I had experienced during my term as a parliament, but I'm also offering solutions and doing a deep dive on what the crisis means. And obviously, a lot of family faces from Harvard, some from Boston University, some came from Brown, some came all the way from New York. Let's co-talk together. So use this as a platform and think about how we can turn Thailand to be competitive for all. But before I go into the detail, I come from Kennedy School. Before we go into the details, we have to understand our audiences first before we speak. That's what politicians do. We have to understand you guys first. So who's been to Thailand? Please show of hands. Who hasn't been to Thailand? Who hasn't been to Thailand and wants to go? Okay, you guys are my personal list. Next time you visit, text me and I'll give you a personal but yeah, I didn't want to discriminate by nationalities, who's Thai and who's not Thai, because this is Harvard. Inclusion, diversity is very important to us, so that I know how to balance the talk. It's going to be about 1 hour. I'm going to be doing the talking for about 40 minutes based on this agenda. It's going to be about Thailand's future, giving you a broad brush, some context for people who might not have been to Thailand or who might not know Thailand so well. The second part of the talk, we'll do a deep dive on the crisis. What do I mean by crisis? I'm going to spell out what crisis for Thailand has to face in the future. We're going to talk some next steps that, this, hopefully, I was only joking about the annual thing. I'll be here for this semester and some of next semester, and hopefully we have some more engagement going forward with the Thai community and also the Asian community and general public at large here in Boston and New England as well. So, I'm going to start off with a takeaway, just in case you fall asleep and you don't get, the first page is really the answer of today's talk. Comfort for few and crisis for most. What do I mean by that? And how do I come up with that numbers? It's not something that is personal to me, but we go to a neutral country in Switzerland. There's two reports that comes out from Swiss banks. The first one is on the right side of me. That's by UBS, the Swiss investment bank. On the left of me, there's some information from the Credit Suisse, which is no longer with us, but they did some report on this inequality. So on this side, you see right here by the US report, which came out last month, it says that Thailand is number 9 in terms of number of millionaires. Currently, we have, in 2023, we have about 100,000 millionaires in Thailand. In 5 years, 2028, that number is going to increase by about 24%. We are number 9 in terms of growth of millionaires, even ahead of Singapore. So, if you are the top 1% or if you're the elites, it's going to be pretty cozy for you going forward. That is going to be good. You're going to be holding a lot of land and properties and all those things that you accumulate in your wealth. Not a problem. Growing by 25% when the GDP is growing about 2%, sort of. But on the left side, most of Thais will still suffer. In terms of wealth distribution, the wealthiest 1% of Thais hold about 67% of the wealth. Let me be clear again. Top 1%, according to Credit Suisse, holds 67% of the wealth in terms of inequality. Give you a bit of context, during that year with this study, Russia, India, and Thailand. So Thailand is number 3. For those of you who visit Thailand as a tourist, you probably enjoy the paradise and everything like that. But if you are a native Thai living outside of Bangkok in rural areas, it's going to be pretty tough for you in terms of wealth inequality, income equality, resources inequality, political inequality, the ability to access to politicians who make laws and things like that. Second point is on the land ownership. 10% holds 61% of Thailand's private land. Only the private land. The government holds also 40% of the land. That's quite a large number. In the US, I checked very quickly, the federal land of America is about 20-25%-ish. So the government of Thailand, the army and things like that holds a large portion of land. But for the private side, top 10% holds 61%. If you are the bottom 10%, you own 0.07% of the land ownership. If you're at the bottom of the pyramid, 10%, again, you hold 0.07% of the land ownership. And without any land, you can't go to the bank and collateral, right? I mean, for those people in this room, you probably have some sort of land ownership. When you go to the bank and you want a collateral out, you get that credit line out. You'll be able to start a business or a mortgage or even, get your funding to come to Harvard. But a lot of people don't have that kind of privilege. So land justice is something that, when I was a member of parliament, I was trying to push very much because I think that's like the first button of your shirt. If you do it right, the other things will come. Financial inclusion will come. Savings will come. Innovation will come. But this is something like the British Revolution or the French Revolution was talking about back in the days. The right to land is something that is very crucial in Thailand. If you look at bank accounts, the top 1% of the accounts holds 70% of the total deficits. So if there's 100 baht in the Thai banking system, just 1% of that volume account holds 70 baht. Imagine that. I mean, and if you are, the remaining 99, that's like, you only have like 30% of that bank account. So just this one slide, I hope it gives you a context of the stark inequality that Thailand faces by a Swiss bank, a neutral country. So I didn't make this up. I'm not here to talk down on my own country, but this is the numbers that they're showing to you. If you're at top 1%, you're going to grow about 25% within 5 years. But if you're at the 99 or not in that list, you're going to be very much suffering in terms of the ability to have your own assets as well as the kind of cash flows or liquidity that you'll be able to survive in the geopolitical environment that the world is operating right now. Now, is that for me? I'm just joking, that's fine. I've done it before, so don't worry about it. And also, so inequality is still a stubborn factor in political economy in Thailand going forward. Something that is quite specific to Thailand. Now, what does it mean for the entire country? So I'm showing you a slide here of our GDP growth back until 1993, until 2023. And then you started to see some resistance to grow. Huh? You started to see some inertia. You started to see that, back in 1993 to 1997, before the Tom Yum Goong crisis, we were growing by about 7.25%. That's on the right side, at the very right side, in terms of real GDP. And then after the financial crisis, we started to recover and grew back a little bit. And that growth rate of that period of time that we enjoyed was about 4.83%. And then the subprime crisis happened. That's when I was here. I was here at the Kennedy School when hamburger crisis happened. And then we started to recover and grew by about 3%. And now we are about 2%. So from 7, starting to plateau to 4 something, 3 something, and then 2 something. So that's Thailand when you compare it from the past and to the present. And when you compare it to a bigger picture, yesterday IMF announced their forecasts in terms of economic growth. The world output will be about 3.2%. The US will grow by about 2.7%, and Thailand will grow by about 2.1%. So very much, this slide shows you that a developing country like Thailand is growing at about a developed country growth trajectory. Philippines is growing by 4 or 5. Indonesia is doing 4 or 5. Vietnam is doing maybe 6 or 7. So as a developing country, we should be growing about that area with our peers in Southeast Asia. But the truth is, we are growing at the age of Singapore, at the pace of Singapore. We're going on a pace of America, which is already a developed country. So because this kind of inequality, if I'm a leader and this is a country and we have about 300 people here, I want to be able to include all of you in my strategy. I don't want just the top 4 to take care of the economy and grow the country or use them as a competitive advantage of the country. I want to be able to include everyone so that you're part of my national strategy as a leader of the country, so that we can be competitive with any other countries around ASEAN, around Asia, around the world. But that's not the case anymore, because the top 1% wants to hold the resources to themselves and leave the remaining 99 to be like up in the air. So that's why the economy is not growing anymore, and it's plateauing, and that's going to hit finally if we don't do something about it, if we leave it as a status quo. So now just in 2 slides you have some numbers of the inequality problem, and also about the overall national trajectory of what it's going to be as of now in 2023, 24, and what can be expected in the future. Now we're going to spell out, going forward, the future of Thailand. When it comes to crisis, spell it out. What does it mean exactly by crisis? And that's crisis to me. Crisis, when you spell it out, C is for climate, R is for reskill, I is for innovation, S is super aging society, I is infrastructure, S is state reform. What's probably going through your mind is that if we're not talking about Thailand and you're thinking about your own country, that's probably the same kind of crisis for you, right? But I'm not going to be generic, because in each of the pillar, when I talk about climate, I'm going to be talking about Thai-specific issues, Thai-specific data. And then the page that follows that issue will be what I think the vision for Thailand should be. We are turning crisis into opportunity here. We're turning crisis into an industry here. We're turning crisis into the competitiveness of our country here. So it's going to be like that. It's going to be 2-page for climate, 2-page for reskill, 2-page for innovation. And once we finish that, you have the picture of what is going to be if we leave Thailand as it is, as a status quo. If we do nothing about it, this is what it's going to look like. But then again, I'm not just here just to complain or moan. I'm trying to hypothesize and turning challenges and weakness of our country into strength and opportunities as well. I think we go through the climate one, and then you probably start to understand what I'm trying to frame and what I'm trying to talk with you guys today. In terms of climate, Thailand is the 5th most vulnerable to climate impact in the world. If you're from Thailand or you just visited Thailand up north, you see how brutal, how severe, how frequent it has become. It's a flash flood that's coming down very quickly, and then in a couple of months it will be a forest fire. So, our beloved destination that we love to go in Chiang Mai, Chiang Rai, it's something that you'll probably miss out for about 7 to 8 months out of that 1 year, because there will be flash flood, because there will be forest fire coming from within the area and also the neighboring countries because they want to do deforest in order to grow animal feed corn, for example. So that's an issue that the country is facing. To the slide, again, I refer to the Swiss Re Institute, which is an insurance company in Switzerland. They do a list on climate risk all around the world. Southeast Asia is very prone to climate risk, and Thailand is number 5 on that list. They quantify the impact of climate risk to the Thai economy. We all know that the Paris Agreement, we want to make sure that we keep the temperature below 2 Celsius pre-industrial level, right? Or 1.5. Guess what? Now I recently checked, it's 1.2 now. And if we keep as is situations in terms of pre-industrial level, that's going to be about 2.6 or 2.9 Celsius. And you look at the slide in the middle, you know, if it's below 2 Celsius, the impact on the Thai economy will be -5. But if it's as it is today, at about 2.6 to 2.9 Celsius, the economy is going to be impacted by about 44%. Why? Why? Because we are an agriculture country. Because we rely heavily on tourism. So regardless of how good our industrial policy is, regardless of how good our agricultural policy is, regardless of how good our tourism strategy is, if we don't take care of this issue, it's unavoidable that the economy will be impacted by about 40-something%, which is almost half of the economy if we don't do something about it. And the most picture on the left side, that's last month, that's when the flash floods starting to coming into the northern part of Thailand. Within the past 10 years, it has been more frequent and more severe and more abrupt. So if we don't do anything about climate, that's going to be the first crisis that Thailand has to face in the future. Now, if that is a problem, what would be the hypotheses or the suggested solution of how we turn this into an industry or how we turn this into an opportunity? First, logically, you have to break down what the carbon emission in Thailand is. So that's what you see on this left side of the slide. You know, you have some electricity generation, 22% of the carbon emission, industrial and transport, 49%, agriculture, that's 15%, and the rest, such as mining, such as waste management. So then we have to have a suggested solution that jives with the carbon issues. First, what I offered during my time as a member of parliament is that we should leverage the infrastructure of solar cell. But the problem with solar cell is that there's no smart grid and there's no net metering. And the cumbersome legal requests for permits in order for them to do. So now if you have a solar cell, right, even if you have that, the way you store it and you resell it to the government will be about 2 baht. But when you use it, the government is going to charge you about 5 baht. So that's going to be 3 baht difference. It doesn't incentivize you to really get into solar cell, which is a good competitive advantage for the country. But smart grid and net metering, just to meter it all out, it will increase the use of solar cell power. And that's a good way to democratize energy. Because if you focus on the fossil fuels, if you keep using coal for a very long time, that's for the elites. That's for the monopolies to generate electricity. But if it's a decentralized solar cell, that's when you democratize energy and lower the cost and reduce the emission. We want to electrify public transportation. I mean, if you go to Thailand, you see that all the motorcycles on the streets and all the cars and our world-renowned traffic is lack of public transportation, especially outside of Bangkok. You might argue that Bangkok is okay. I've been to Bangkok, I took the BTS, I took the MRT, it's not that bad, but we're talking about 75 provinces outside of Bangkok that they don't have public transportation. And if we look at this pain point and turn it into a big opportunity, that we could just electrify public transportation, reduce the road safety, not increase the road safety, as well as helping people. If you are, at the bottom 25%, you also need a motorcycle. That's part of, something that you need to pay in order for you to survive, because you don't have public transportation. If you are middle class, you probably need a Honda. If you're rich, you probably need a Mercedes or BMW, because public transportation outside of Bangkok is so bad. That's why you have to really have to make it happen. And why use fossil fuel when you have a chance to start? Just use electrification of public transportation all around town. That's like lots and lots of money that we're talking about here. Climate resilient, low carbon agriculture. So precision agriculture, reducing the use of fertilizer, reducing the use of seeds, and reduce the use of water such as drip irrigation. That's something that Thailand should be leading in terms of future of all these things, because we are an agricultural country. And fourth is on urban risk, sponge city is something that I'm trying to look into, whether it's the ability to have urban planning, wetland, permeable surfaces that allow this country to absorb flash flood and things like that. That's a lot of investment to be done. But once we have cracked these kind of things, we'll be able to tackle the issues, the liabilities, and turn it into an asset, and turn it into an industry, and turn it into an opportunities that we can exploit in our neighboring countries in ASEAN. So that's the first example of what I mean by talking about crisis at the same time as thinking about turning it into competitiveness. I'm just giving you guys a break, that's all. I mean, it's a lot to digest. Yes, so this is going to be the format of today's talk so that we can keep continuing. In terms of reskill, the labor no longer up to par compared to peer. So on the left side, you ask for a plan in terms of labor productivity of Thailand versus Malaysia, Vietnam, Indonesia, and Cambodia. Thailand is that one on the red, a bit above Vietnam. So you see that the labor productivity has declined over the recent years. And the numbers in terms of manufacturing production index declined by about 10%. 40% of the Thai labor force are older than 40, and more than 50% of the labor force have skill below the essential skill levels. On the third slide that you see here, that's the trade deficit with China. You started to see that our competitiveness, our industrial competitiveness is declining, whether it's automotive, whether it's electronics, and whether it's construction materials, starting to look like that. So that's the problem that Thailand is facing in the future in terms of our labor productivity. Now, what do we do with this then? How do you reskill people? First of all, obviously you need some financial enablers and some legal enablers to make sure that reskill happens in Thailand. But it doesn't work like that. There's people who wanted to reskill, but once they have done it, there's no market for it. And that's really the issue of the labor productivity in Thailand. People wanted to reskill in their 40s, but there's no job opportunities for that. So how do you match the supply and demand to make it happen? So what I'm offering is called nano degrees and micro credentials for strategic workforce and reskilling. It doesn't have to take a lot of time. I mean, they're working every day for like 40 hours and 50 hours and things like that. They don't have time to reskill. They're like at the minimum wage. They go home and they just crash. They have no time to reskill. But if you really design it to be nano degrees and micro credentials, just exactly what they needed to do, that will be something that is digestible and they can chew it up. But the most important thing is on the right side. I call it the human capital loans. I get that idea from South Korea. You know, if you are certified on a particular course degrees, it becomes a collateral for you to go to the bank and get a credit out. If you're a very good good photographer or a good cinematography in K-Wave in South Korea, you don't even have to have land. You don't even have to have cars. You don't even have to have revenue or income. You use that certificate and go to the bank, and the bank will do income sharing agreement loan with you. That allows people to be, alternative credit scoring for those people to solve in terms of unequal assets that they have. But this is a way that provides both supply side of things, make it easy for people to reskill, and also on the demand side, it gives them, a reason why they want to reskill. Because once they reskill and they're certified on certain things, you go to the bank and say, look, I have a degree on AI and accounting. They are going to okay, I'm going to include you in the financial system, do an alternative credit scoring on you, and finally you'll be able to get the cash out and start a business or something like that. It gives you an incentive or a reason for you to reskill. Without the number two, no labor or no workers is going to waste their time trying to go to classes and learning about something that they don't want to do about, they don't want to focus on. Third is on innovation. On the left side, you see R&D of Thailand. It's about 1.16% of the GDP. We compare it to Japan, Korea, Malaysia, Singapore, and the source is from IND World Competitiveness. Patent index on the second one, the U.S. Chamber International IP Index 2024, the scores of Thailand is 38, compared again to Malaysia, Singapore, Korea, and Japan. That's what Thailand is all about. And number three is the high-tech exports proportion, 2014 compared to 2021. So it's arguably that Thailand is a low-tech, low-touch economy. The question is, how do we turn this kind of dilemma into a high-tech, high-touch economy? Because we no longer have the scale. Back in the days, people want to invest in Thailand and export out of the country. But now you have various countries like Bangladesh, you have countries like Brazil, China comes into the picture. There are large economies of scale. These countries are much more competitive than Thailand. The question is, how do we make sure that Thailand's become competitive in the sense of high tech and high touch? And what I offer is on 3 points. What I offer is, first, regional ambition fund. You want to be a startup? Okay. But please don't just focus on Thailand. We only have 76 million people. The size is not large enough. If you want to solve a problem, you see a pain point in transportation like Grab, for example, you have to think about this as a regional ambition. In Singapore, if you want to get a grant for a startup ideas, the condition is that you leave Singapore. There's something like that. You can never be in Singapore. So same thing for Thailand. When I think about this, if I was in the government and I have a digital innovation fund, come and get it. It's going to be easy to get, not very cumbersome. The only condition is you have to think of ASEAN market. You have to think of Asia market, and you need to be out of the country. In order for you to really absorb new ideas and technology and things like that, in order for us to become innovative, it doesn't have to be in Thailand. The key difference is that a lot of politicians back in Thailand, they think of this kind of industrial policy is made in Thailand. I think of it as made with Thailand. It doesn't have to be confined within the territory of our country. It's too small. You have to have regional ambition in order to become innovative. Second is on pain point innovation. All of that inequality that I was talking about. If you're coming from Sattahip or from Chonburi, for example, the water quality is not very good. If you come to Phuket, the problem with water leakage is about 50%. The water goes into the system and it goes to your hotel. You input about 100, it comes by only 50 because of all the leakages in the water system. How do you use off-shelf innovation that's already existing? UX, UI, smart metering, water flow analysis. All these things that are available anywhere in the world, but use it for inequality. Technology for inequality. How do you fix inequality of Thailand? Because if you see how much it is, if you turn it into an asset and digitize it using technology to use, that's like lots and lots of money for all the folks from the business school. I mean, those people that think, they want to move to Southeast Asia, they want to move to Thailand and have a business idea, just look at all the inequality that the country has. And then use innovation that is off the shelf. Doesn't have to be like the most advanced things to do, but you put it into a package, you'll be able to make sure that there's a big market for you to tackle. And the last one is niche innovation. Whether it's silicon carbide, whether it's gallium nitride, these are the semiconductor industries that is too small for the Americans to think about. It's too small for the Indians to think about. It's too small for the Japanese to think about. It's too small for the South Korean to think about. But Thailand has a lot of electronic industry and landscape and capability that we can focus, because these two specialized tech is very important for EV and also solar cells. So it can't be, if you ask the government and they say next steps will be robotics and semiconductor, it's too big. And it's too big, and you can never compete with the amount of investment that Japanese is doing, or South Korean, or Vietnam, or America, or India. So it has to be something that is relevant, but very niche, and something that Thailand can innovate on. On super aging society. So aging more, aging fast. 20%, 21% of Thai population will be older than 65 years old. Compare that to the world average of 14%. Singapore is only 18.5%. That number within 2030 will become 30%. So imagine if you have a country, 100 people, and 30 of them are retiring. They're older than 65, and the remaining 60-something has to provide as a workforce and provide as a social safety net for the 35% that is retiring already. It could happen in Japan, it could happen in South Korea, it could happen in Europe, but it's happening in Thailand now. So that's something that we're facing in the future. And the workforce, by 2035, like I said, 30% of the population will be in retirement. But then I think of this as a super economy, as an opportunity for Thailand to leverage itself and use it to tackle the aging society problems in Thailand. Whether it's assistive healthcare, whether it's aging in places, whether it's a silverpreneur, silver fitness, wellness, and travel, or what I call dementia village. Dementia village is a concept developed in the Netherlands back in the year 2000 or something like that. I'll probably come up with a better name. Not exactly dementia village, but neuro wellness village or something like that. But if you design the entire thing, the entire community, and I'm thinking about Lampang, a province up north in Thailand where 30% of the people are already aging. Make it a universal design, big signs integrated in the community, make sure that our medical staff and hospitality staff that is already good, make it into a village, and all over the world, if that's how you want to retire properly, neuro wellness village or dementia village is something that Thailand has that capability to do. Number one and number two, there's already a lot going on in Thailand. We leverage our automotive industry infrastructure, also electronic infrastructure, and turn it into an assistive healthcare. Aging in places is like, they go into your home and remodel the entire house to make sure that the elderly can make a living and stay inside and age properly in place. These are the four things that I think are opportunities for the country in terms of super aging society. Infrastructure. I look at this as the cost of GDP. Compared to Malaysia, South Korea, Singapore, and Japan, the cost of logistics per GDP is about 15%. Our port ranking is 45 compared to all those from Singapore and Japan and South Korea. Tourism, while it's in high demand. If you look at any media, you see Thailand as #1 top destination in terms of demand. But in terms of supply, in terms of infrastructure, it needs to be upgraded. Tourism service is 2.18 according to World Economic Forum, compared to that of South Korea, Malaysia, and Singapore, for example. So that's a room for upgrade in terms of infrastructure. The problem is, with rail and with port, that's why all the commercial vehicles, commercial logistics, residential transportation is all on the roads. That's why the roads in Thailand is always in traffic, and that's why it's always looking like somebody just like a 15-ton truck that goes on it every day. Because there's no rails. There's no good rails in terms of commercial and residential transportation. The problem is this, the gauge. Who's an engineer in this room? Who's a transportation engineer? So how many types of gauge is there in the rail system in the world? Do you know? Do you know? There's two standards of rail gauge. One is called meter gauge, and the other one is called standard gauge. The meter gauge is 1,000 millimeter, and that's in Asia and that's in Latin America. But the standard gauge is about 1,435 millimeter. So I need my details because of this. I don't want to make a mistake. So if I take the rail down from southern part of Thailand and go to Malaysia, or if I go up north to Laos and trying to go to China, that's the problem, that I have to get all the rail in Thailand and then go to the immigration and get on a different rail. Because, one is, the width is 1,000 millimeter and one is 1,435 millimeter. So the train is cumbersome, it's not seamless. And we have to really think about just realignment or even a double gauge system so that it allows continuation, so that it makes sense for you to upgrade your rails. Electrification of it, decentralization of public transportation I was telling you about, and also resilience of tourism infrastructure. It's going to get worse in Chiang Mai. It's going to get worse in Phuket. It's going to get worse in Nakhon Si Thammarat. The question is, how do you adapt and how do you make sure that you are resilient enough that tourism doesn't get impact as much because it's 20% of our GDP. So state reform, corruption, and inefficiency. Thailand dropped by 7 rankings from 101 to 108 compared to any other countries. The better benchmark is the year when last military coup happened. So, they intervened and there's so much corruption in Thailand. And paternalistically, the military, it's good people and they know better and they want to intervene and take care of the corruption problems. So the year that they took, the year that they intervened, if I'm not mistaken, the ranking was about 90 something. 91, 92 or something like that. And 10 years after it becomes 108. So, the excuse of throwing a military coup to reduce corruption doesn't really show that number that much. So how do you take care of corruption problems in Thailand, and what do I propose? I propose regulatory guillotine. There's about 7,000 laws. That 7,000 laws is for discretion. It's like permits. If you want to open a factory, you have to get 10 permits. It's going to be a bit slow, but if you slip something below the table, it might be quicker, even if you don't need it anymore. The law was developed in year 1912 or something like that, but it needs to be there because discretion and monopolizing and lack of transparency leads to corruption. That's why the law is still there. That's why the permit is still there. Just because it allows discretion and encourages corruption. We did a study on it in the parliament. We can reduce it by half. I mean, some of these laws were written in the 19,000, like 114 years ago, but it still exists because nobody wanted to think about making it efficient and things like that.
On the right side, that's the proportion of personnel budget to GDP compared to countries in the Asia Pacific. You can see that Thailand is about 6.12 in terms of public servants to the capita. So the efficiency of government is something that we really need to think about. So for these issues, what I propose is that we go through regulatory guillotine and digital government, cloud, cloud policies of the government. Each ministries have their own clouds. So that's the inefficiency that the government has to invest on, which is our tax money, by the way. But if you have it into a single cloud policy that we were trying to propose, you reduce the inefficiency, you reduce the redundancy, and then you can streamline the service for the people. Regulatory guillotine and reduce the laws by almost about half to reduce the corruption. I feel like that's the way forward in terms of the state reform. So I close with the same page that I started. You might look at it as the future of Thailand is in crisis if you do nothing about it, if it's a status quo. But if you think about it and you try to strategize and hypothesize and mobilize, you started to see it as solutions and opportunities. And it doesn't have to be, as the title suggested, that it's going to be comfort for few and crisis for most, but it can be competitive for all if we work together. So that's it in a nutshell. On the slides we put up online for all the students. Some of you come from the science school, some of you from law school, some of you from business school, some of you come from different universities. We can do a deep dive on all these things, and if you're interested, all these information, all these data, you don't have to go through it yourself because it's already there, and I compile it for you as a springboard, as a platform for you to keep understanding, engaging, and partnering up with Thailand. So I'm going to close with the next steps. So there are 4 things that I'm trying to reintegrate myself and make myself useful here during my time at Harvard. There's a public event like today, which we did together. There's a peer engagement, which is more communal. I call it Pad Thai in politics. It's more a small group of students who wants to learn about Thailand, who wants to learn about Thai politics, and it's more political in that second pillar that we did yesterday. There's also private office hours for about 20 minutes for anything that you wanted to talk about. If you have questions about today's presentation and you want to do a deep dive on one of the crises, you can also do that. And I also get a lot of requests from the professors to give them a practical experience on what they are teaching to complement and make sure that we can group the next generation of leaders together. So be sure to give us feedback and reach out, and if you want to do a deep dive on something, that's how you can reach me on that last. So that's going to be the last slide that I leave on the floor. I think we have we want to leave here at about, so that was exactly 1 hour, by the way. 4 minutes over time. We have about 20 minutes, let's say, of anything you want to talk about and anything you want to ask, and we'll take rounds.
Just a few ground rules. This is being live streamed as a webinar, so we're going to encourage you to use a microphone, and periodically we will add questions from our virtual audience. We have one student who is monitoring the Q&A. And when you ask your questions, just 3 simple things to keep in mind. Please tell us your name, your affiliation, so we know where you're coming from. Number 2, be brief. So many people have an opportunity to ask questions. And number 3, please end with a question mark. Okay, so maybe we'll do it if we do it like a round of a few. Okay. Sir? Microphone? We have somebody with a microphone.
Hi, and thank you so much for the conversation. My name is Roy Schwartz-Dupont from Harvard Kennedy School, Master of Public Policy. I wanted to ask you, what could you do differently to be the Prime Minister and move south your agenda?
Do you want to take a series of them, or the one?
Yes, because we're very conscious of your time and we have about 20 minutes before the reception. So maybe three questions, round of 3 questions, and then I'll answer them in one go.
Okay.
Hi, thank you, Kapita. I'm Sia from the School of Public Health at Harvard, and I was in your study group yesterday. I'm also from Malaysia. So just taking a step back on the role of ASEAN, I wanted to ask, what is your vision for ASEAN and the role that we play in the region? I mean, it was formed in 1967, and it was founded on principles of non-interference and consensus decision making. So, yeah, what's your vision for it? Thank you.
Maybe from this, yes, please.
Hi, my name is Jamin and I'm from the business school. I'm doing my MBA there. I'm curious because the solutions that you put up all sound very exciting, innovation, R&D, infrastructure building, and that actually requires a lot of financial resources and on top of that political will. So how do you think about managing that and where do you think that's going to come from?
Okay, thank you very much.
Maybe we'll add one more from online. Do we have
Okay.
any, I'm looking for our designated, Tim, where are you? Do we have any? Maybe one from online?
We have one question from our online audience, a listener from Myanmar. The question is, thank you so much for sharing us your insights based on your experiences. I am from Myanmar and have been to Thailand multiple times. My question for you is, what are your thoughts on the fashion shopping industry and its sustainability effect in Thailand?
Fashion shopping?
I'm reading what's down there.
Fashion shopping industry.
Fashion shopping industry and its sustainability effect in Thailand.
I shop second-hand mostly. I got a Barber jacket, which is very nice when I brought it to Harvard. And it's second-hand because I don't usually go with the fast fashion thing. But I'll address that as well. Okay, so the first question was about what I could have done differently to become the Prime Minister. I should have won more. I got only 40% of the votes, and I campaigned very hard for about 90 days. No regrets, no time for regrets. I did everything I could with the amount of resources that I had, that we had, and we work as a team. We really used, the Harvard Kennedy School campaign management playbook in order for us to come up with that. So I'm very proud of what I had achieved. I felt like I have left my dent in the universe, and I'll try again in 10 years when I'm 54. A few things that I felt like it could have been different is that, I remember I was citing Kevin McCarthy's bid for House Speaker here in the US. He went for 15 times, and I felt like my bid to become the Prime Minister was only 1 time, and it should have been more. Because when you vote when you select the leader of the country, you should really try your best to follow the mandate of the votes. If you stop by the first time and you disenfranchise 14 million votes and you couldn't let it become the second time and the third time, and the quorum was really the issue. The senators, we, of course, 250 appointed senators, they pretty much 50 of them did not show up for quorum to choose the Prime Minister. If they had shown up for quorum, some of them had promised on television, some of them promised me personally that they will vote for me. So if that 50 that were missing that day showed up for quorum, the situation might have been different. On role of ASEAN, in a sentence, non-interference or non-indifference. We definitely really have to ask ourselves that the role of ASEAN, to achieve the historical achievement that we had done back in the days, and also the future potential that we do together. Yes, non-interference, but does it mean that you can be non-indifferent with what's going on? For example, in the case of Myanmar, we have that 5-point consensus back maybe 3-4 years back. It might be time to turn it into a 5-year roadmap. just 5-point consensus, it will be just the bullet points. But there's no concrete planning of what it is like to find the right amount of incentive, the right amount of pressure, so that the people of Myanmar can return to democracy and think about what post-conflict Myanmar would look like, and reduce the risk of balkanization. And that's something that we really need to be thinking about. And also, in terms of fashion industry, the exploitation of labor, because we share the proximity of asset and the proximity of burden of about 2,700 kilometers between Myanmar and Thailand. If they sneeze, we get sick as well. So it's not like we are trying to interfere with them or anything like that, but the risk of ignoring or the risk of being indifferent with what's going on, it will spill over to Thailand in terms of the climate, in terms of online scams and all that. The last one, because I answered 1, 2, and then I skipped to 4 in terms of financial, legal, political. That's how I started the talk. I said it will be a continuation, but there will be some differences. I mentioned all these strategies, dementia village and sponge city and all these new ideas to make sure that Thailand can capitalize on these opportunities. Obviously, there's enablers that I didn't talk about, which is financial enablers, legal enablers, and also political will enablers. Those are the things that we'll probably have to talk in some other time. But I think, when it comes to climate change, for example, we were trying to say that it has to be a green budgeting and allocate 10% of the national budget to be exactly targeting or tackling on the climate change risk because it's so high for Thailand, for example. That will be it for this round.
Another round, maybe we'll start at this side of the room. Anybody? Okay, wait for the mic, please. Microphone?
First of all,
It's not on.
my bad. First of all, thank you for this great informative talk, and especially for all your service to our country. My name is Sita Tantuko. I'm a student at MIT, and my question.
That's a running joke.
And my question relates to the point you made at the start about the rise of millionaires, and I would just call them oligarchs in Thailand. In terms of economics reform that would eliminate them and provide more equality to the country, my understanding is that addressing the structure would inevitably cause the growth to slow even further as we adjust businesses and change structures in our economy. In that case, the support of the democratic process and the ruling government would plummet due to the people economic downturn temporarily. I would like to ask you, as an experienced politician, how would you reassure the people that things would get better during those reforms if you had the chance to make it eventually?
So you want me to show you inclusive growth? That's essentially your question.
Exactly.
Well, economy. Okay, sorry. So we need 3 more. Yeah.
We're going to be efficient.
Thank you. Hello? Hello, hello? Yes. Hello. Hi, my name is Stefan. I'm research professor at Chulalongkorn and at the economics department here. At Chulalongkorn, I'm just setting up a group on competitiveness. So this is wonderful. You're miles ahead of what we're doing and thinking about. But one thing that lurks a little bit behind what you're saying here, which is the distribution of sectors in the Thai economy. Services is the strongest, agriculture is still very strong, and manufacturing is shrinking. But productivity is low in services, and the present government pushes for tourism, which is more of that. And how much productivity can you gain? You will never get a machine to massage 2 people at the same time. But you had nice words about tourism too. And there's another side to it, that tourism brings in foreign exchange, which pushes up the exchange rate, which creates Dutch disease for the manufacturing industry. So how do you solve this contradiction?
Let's, little gender balance, please.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm Sunny and I'm from Kennedy School. So I have a question on maybe more on city governance. So I was in Klondike this summer and I learned about the ongoing eviction threat of the community faced by the need for urban development by the BNB. So I just want to hear from you your firsthand insight, maybe on the ground. What do you think are the way forward for more like fair relocation of the slums, but also ensure that Bangkok can have like better urban development?
You were in Klondike?
Yeah, I was.
Oh, this is
Yeah.
where I come from too.
Oh, really?
And maybe one more from online.
It's a question about 3 years from now. Since you're stepping more into a consultant type role within the People's Party, the next incarnation of Move Forward Party, what do you think is your strategy in a high level for addressing the challenges faced in recent elections and overcoming those obstacles for the next round of parliamentary races?
Okay, I'm gonna Tarantino it and answer the last question first, because that's a trap. I'm not a consultant, and that's against the law. So, that's almost like the election commission getting the webinar and like put a poison pill into that question. So first of all, let's address that question first. This is going live and it's going to be digital footprint. So I'm not a consultant to the People's Party. I'm basically a regular Thai, which can help them with campaign according to the law. I could sign up for a minimum wage to go on stage and do a big speech rally for them according to the law, but I totally believe in the leadership of the People's Party or the party version 3.0. I'm the 2.0 guy, so they're the 3.0. I think they're going through a crystallization process. Crystallization process requires time, requires heat, and requires pressure. So that's what the leadership is going through. So, I mean, if they're going through it, they'll be gem. If they don't go through it, they'll become ash. So I feel like they can have their own strategy and decide on what's going to be the strategy for them going forward. Back to question number one, economic, selling you inclusive growth. Growing the economy while reducing inequality. I think the first two slides is just a data-driven solution that answers why we can't think about the trickle-down economics and thinking about inviting big businesses to come invest in Thailand and export it out and make sure that low wage is the only competitive advantage of our nation. Because you can see from growing 7%, that might have worked, back in the days, but then as the world changes, as the Thai population changes, it becomes by 2%. So again, if you are a leader of any group, you want to be able to divide and conquer and use every single resources in your country to gain competitive advantage and not just a few. And in order for them to do that, for example, you can avoid the Dutch disease by having more local markets. Your labor will become more productive as they have a better living, stage of living. You could really think about how to capitalize on technologies to reduce pain points of the people. That's a lot of money that we're talking about here. So it will benefit everyone, and it will bring the country up to par with our peers. Economic structure, econ complexity. I need to rephrase the question a little bit. In terms of agriculture, 40% of the population is still in agricultural sector, but it contributes only 8% of the GDP. So to really say that it's a productive sector, maybe that's really the pain point that we really need to think about of how to increase the productivity in agriculture. And that's why I was offering low carbon agriculture, precision agriculture, drip irrigation, robotics. If we were to be good at robotics, it has to be something to do with agricultural robotics and mechanization. Not something like, robotics when you compare to South Korea where like this and they're like this already. So it has to be a niche innovation. I thought about this economic complexity from Professor Hausman's class. He teaches about why countries are poor, volatile, and unequal. And the more complex
the economic structure is, usually it leads to the advancement because of risk diversification. But for Thailand, if you talk about automotive, electronics, and tourism, and if COVID hits, boom, done. If EV comes, boom. You know, if semiconductor that is going on in Taiwan and the South Koreans are investing a lot in Vietnam, gone. So we have to really utilize the existing capability and find our niche going forward, which is the silicon carbide that I was telling you about. Klong Tơi. You know, the inclusion of land development, it begins with the first slide that I was talking to you about, in terms of land ownership. Because if you look at the overall land ownership, the government owns about half, let's say it's half, I can't remember the exact number, but let's say it's 50% is owned by the government itself. And then the rest becomes the private land. And I compare that with Germany, I compare that with Sweden, I compare that with America. The government owns way too much. Military owns way too much land. And in terms of private, it's so unequal as I showed it to you. So yes, you can fix community by community. You can go to Klong Tơi, you can go to Bang Khae, you can go to Khon Kaen in various parts and try to include them in the development, and we're going to have some parks and make sure it's vertical living and they can be there so that I could have my luxury condos over here. I mean, it's micro fixing. I mean, it's good for you to do that and keep them some transition period before it becomes casino complexes and things like that. But I would look at it as a very macro level and see what it means to do a land justice. And that's something that I'm looking forward to learning here at Harvard one of those days.
One more now?
Sure.
I think
We
we
still have
have
time, but
Yeah, one more.
7 more minutes and then we're on
We're
time.
so efficient. We're uber efficient.
We have to be.
So maybe start on this side of the room?
These people have a lot of things to do.
Yeah, we didn't quite get to you, so please,
I'm from Harvard University. So I really love your plan, but it seems that there is an established institution and that stand in the way. So I guess one question is why is this institution so successful at preventing the prosperity competitiveness?
Oh, you should have come to Top Time Politics yesterday. Yes, I'll answer your question.
And
I
is
understand.
there anything that we as Thai citizens can do?
Okay, thank you.
please, sir.
สวัสดีครับ ประโมท สุภปัญญา freelance scholar and visitors to Boston. And my question is, to my understanding, since the first national plan in 1963, and happened to me that the rich and the poor gap widening and widening. How you ensure that your crisis model would turn around at least or narrowing that gap. Thank you.
One chance over here. A very enthusiastic young lady in the back, absolutely.
Thank you so much. My name is Ice Tukapornumwiti. I remember you mentioned about startup and you endorse tech community. And I also remember you suggest that the owner of startup should move out of the country in order to grow at scale. And I would like to ask, from your knowledge of your resources, how would you help endorse them to grow at scale if you want to push this forward to a public of people in Thailand? And I actually own a startup company here too, and I did what you suggest. I moved out of the country to start a business here.
Maybe one
So
more.
we're ahead of the curve.
One more online.
Sorry.
Excellent. Keep getting your steps in.
We have a question from a live audience in Thailand. Do you think much of these solutions will be impeded by the fact that it will be now near impossible to change the constitution?
Yes, I anticipated this kind of questions before. That's why I started the talk. That it's not going to be a political one, and there's political constraint, financial constraint, and legal constraint, which I intentionally left out of the presentation because that's another lecture. That's another thing that we talked about. Obviously, you have to follow your heart, but take your brain with you. And obviously, we're trying to come up with innovative ideas to turn crisis into competitiveness. We have to think, without the constraints first and work backwards on how to fix the constraints, whether it's legal, whether it's financial, whether it's political will. Which goes back to the first questions in terms of institutions blocking election results to become election outcomes. That's essentially what it is in a sentence, that election victory does not translate to governance. The question becomes independent organizations, but independent of what? Independent of who, and who watches the watchdog. Yesterday at Pa ēm Politics, we did talk about this a little bit, but what we are trying to do and to make sure that the independent organizations are truly independent and linked to the people in terms, that's what democracy means, and that's on three things. First thing is on the origin of these independent organizations. Are they appointed or are they linked to the people in any way? Second is on the transparency. Obviously, there was a court order to dissolve political parties on and on, but you're never allowed to criticize the court. So there's no transparency on arguing back or using logic to really talk about whether it's legal, whether it makes sense, whether it's logical or not. And then third one is about accountability. How do you make sure that such a very big power, 9 people, 5 people, commission, whether it's election commission, whether it's anti-corruption commission, whether it's the court, just 7 to 9 people, it can, get rid of election winner and also the prime minister. Dictatorism was also removed. So it's not just a partisan issue, it's a bipartisan issue. But if you don't take care of the origin, the transparency, and the accountability of their decision, then we can never move beyond the cycle, the vicious cycle that we see. And obviously, winning elections to be in the government and have enough votes to amend the constitution or to amend laws is something that is a stepping stone towards that institutional reform, constitutional justice that we are talking about. In terms of 1963, the Pa first plan on equality. I read that, and then I was working in the government before coming to the Kennedy School. I think that was maybe the 5th version, the 6th version, and they were still talking about inequality. And then it was when I reached Kennedy School and I started to learn that inequality comes in various ways. Income equality is one, and that's usually what they talk about, measured by Gini coefficient. But then there's wealth inequality, land inequality, resource inequality, public health inequality, education inequality, access to power inequality. So if you just touch on just one particular popular inequality KPI, which the government talks about a lot, which is the income inequality, and you look at the Gini coefficient, it looks okay. It's not that bad. But the devil is in the detail, just as the first slide that I showed you in terms of deposit, in terms of land ownership. That's when you started to understand, inequality is not income. And when the government talks about Gini coefficient, it's not that bad. But if you look at all these land ownership concentration, wealth concentration, over-centralization in Bangkok public schools, that's when you start to understand that if this plan becomes the 100th plan, the gap is not going to go away. And that's why when we were campaigning, and we tackled the reform, the structure, the access to land ownership and things like that, and not just looking at the top quintile and the bottom quintile when it comes to income inequality. Last one was about unicorn, moving forward. The thing is, there's 2 animals that stop unicorn happening in Thailand, startups. The first one is the tiger, and the second one is the elephant.
the bureaucracy of, doing a lot of paper when you're trying to get grants from the government to be a startup, it improved a lot, to be fair. But in order for you to get into digital innovation or Thailand 4.0 grant or the startup grant, it's like a huge amount of pieces of paper that you need to do, and many criteria and many conditions, and also not very regional ambition focus. So that's why I felt like you have to move fast and break things, yeah? That's what startup is all about. You are disrupting things. It has to be very fast, very flexible in the way you want to do it. That's why you should be anywhere in the world, as long as you are linked to Thailand. That's how I'm going to change the innovation policy once I become the Prime Minister 10 years from now. I mean, otherwise last but not least, the tiger. The large conglomerates, the monopolies. You're in fintech and you want to do a digital wallet, you got to make sure you wait for the banks and all the retailers to have that permit first. And the people who grant all those permits from Bank of Thailand and people who work, well, not all, so I'm not accusing anyone, but some of the people who work from Bank of Thailand come from commercial banks. So I'm not saying that there's any correlation, but if you want to be in fintech, you want to do peer-to-peer lending, you want to do virtual banking and things like that, you got to get the permits, and the permits are somewhat related to the sleeping tigers in the Thai economy. So if we don't fix it to be firm ground, fair game, and then fast growth. When the government talks about it, we want to be fast growth, let's do robotics, let's do genetic engineering, biotech, all these cool things, but they don't tackle about the firm ground, the quality of the education, access to liquidity, the financial inclusion. They don't talk about fair game, not using law as a barrier to entry and things like that. So you got to build it from the bottom up, because it's been proved again and again that trickle-down economics doesn't work.
Fortunately, all good things must come to an end, but this doesn't quite end. In a moment, right outside, we're going to have a public reception, and Kumbita will be here, mingle with you, get your photos and everything, so it's not quite over. But before we exit this beautiful hall, please join me first in thanking our online viewers. Our online viewers from Southeast Asia have been up since 2 a.m. tomorrow morning to tune in, so please join me in thanking them. And finally, please join me in expressing our deep appreciation to Kumbita for so generously sharing his experience and insights with us. So the conversation continues right outside those doors.
ทีมค่ะ
พอดีเดี๋ยวห้องนี้ต้องดูเขามีคนไหมครับขออนุญาตถ่ายรูปนะครับขอบคุณมากมาจากนิวยอร์กเนี่ยใช่ครับรายการสุดท้ายที่แอนแทร็กนะใช่จำได้เลย
คุณเทียมทอดจ้ะโทษนะคะไม่ขอโทษค่ะไม่เป็นไรเดินไม่ทัน
What do you think
เดินไม่ทันป้าไม่ทันคุณทิม
พูดดีมากเลยนะ
จ้าโอ้โทษค่ะสอนไหนล่ะคุณทิมอยู่นู่นดูสิคิวรอถ่ายรูปค่ะไหนคุณทิมอยู่ไหนเอ่ย
Sorry
ป้ามองไม่เห็นคุณทิมเลยอ่ะ คุณทิมอยู่ไหนเนี่ย อ๋อ
ต่อคิวกันครับ
ต้นน่ะ
เอ็มอ่ะเอ็มอ่ะ
คุณทิมมารถต้น
ไม่ได้มารถเติ้ล
มารถต้น
ไม่ใช่
ใช่
ไม่ใช่ คุณทิมมาเอง
มารถต้นแหละ
ไม่ได้มารถเติ้ล
เดี๋ยวป้าวางตรงนี้ก่อนนะป้าวางตรงนี้ก่อนไม่รู้ว่าภาพมันชัดหรือเปล่าค่ะ ป้าขอปิดไลฟ์นะคะ ป้าเอ็มขอปิดไลฟ์ขอบคุณทุกกำลังใจขอบคุณมากๆนะคะขอให้ทุกคนมีความสุขมากๆค่ะสวัสดีค่ะ